Hello, and tonight we are going to talk about relationships. My name is Shawn Pigg. That's right, Pig. Patient, intelligent, gifted, good looking. Got to have fun with this. So tonight, let's say that this is going to be a very neutral conversation. Let's say you're a man or a woman. It doesn't matter, okay? And you are explaining to your partner about your feelings, why you're hurt, what they did to hurt you, and what they did to upset you. Now, typically, one of two things are going to happen, or one of three things. Number one, they're going to acknowledge it and be accountable and be sincere and apologetic. Number two, they're going to become defensive about it, or they're going to become dismissive. And you can become defensive and dismissive at the same time. So basically saying, so if they acknowledge it and become accountable, they're going to simply say, I understand that hurt you. I apologize. I will not do that again. That is somebody who is accountable. When they're dismissive and defensive, they're going to say something like, well, you heard that wrong. You're only hearing what you want to hear. And then they're most likely going to, shut the conversation down by saying, have a great day, have a good night. And basically, it's a subtle way of closing the conversation up so they don't have to get into the discussion anymore. Now, the important thing to notice is that a lot of people miss in this type of relationship and situation is what the message did not do. You express your feelings, you express your pain, you express your hurt, and it wasn't even acknowledged. There was no acknowledgement of the feelings. There was no address of the deeper issues you brought up. There was no empathy for how you felt, and there was no attempt to try to continue the conversation. Instead, they reframed it as your perception as being wrong. Now, this pattern right here that people are in is called a relation. It keeps relationships stuck in a loop. One person is trying to talk about how they feel, and the other person responds by debating the facts of the moment instead of the feelings. So the conversation never actually resolves itself and never comes to a completion. So the healthiest move, if you're in this type of situation, is no arguing back. You told them exactly how you felt, what the problems were, and if you do argue back, it will likely turn into more blame, more defending, and more misunderstanding. So sometimes silence and space communicate more strength than trying to prove your point. So if you want to keep it short and calm, say something like, I understand, that's how you see it. I wasn't trying to, argue with you. I was just sharing how it made me feel. Either way, I wish you the best today, and then leave it at that. No more explaining and no more chasing clarity. Something important most people don't realize about this type of relationship. Relationships only work if both parties are willing to make an effort. If both parties are willing to hear each other's feelings without trying to win an argument. If one person is always trying to be right and the other person is trying to be understood, this relationship will slowly break down and dissolve and go away. Because being understood is what is creating the connection. So if they're defensive or dismissive, there is no connection. Being accountable and apologetic and understandable, that is where a connection comes in. That's how you create a long-lasting relationship. And did you know something? Did you know that you can love somebody deeply and still not be right for each other? And that realization hurts, but it's also the moment when people start to regain their power back. So basically, if somebody goes into defensive mode or dismissive mode, many things are going to happen. Number one is deflection. Instead of addressing the deeper things that you shared, like your heart, your pain, you being pushed away, or what they said or what they did, it shifts the focus to your interpretation. Meaning, basically saying, you heard it wrong. This moves the conversation away from their actions onto your perception. Then there's going to be justification. When they say something like, that is basically what you heard, That is framing their behavior as a reaction to you, not something they are taking responsibility for. That's called lack of accountability. That's a very common psychological defense mechanism. It protects someone from feeling like they did something wrong. Instead of being accountable and saying, I'm sorry that hurt you, I will try and change that, I won't do that again, it becomes, I only said that because of you. And then, or the conversation is just shut down. Ending with enjoy your day is a soft way of closing a conversation. It signals I'm done discussing this. Not necessarily because they don't care, but it's because they don't want to go deeper into emotional conversation with you. So here's the most important thing. What most people don't realize about relationships like this, what I'm speaking about, when one partner wants deep emotional resolution and the other partner prefers to move past, quickly, to avoid a conflict, the relationship becomes an emotional tug of war. It's just constantly pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling. It's one person keeps saying, can we talk about this, please? The other person keeps saying, why are we still talking about this? Neither person is technically wrong at all. They just have different communication styles. But over the time period, it makes one person feel, the person that's expressing their feelings and their hurt, it makes them feel unheard. It makes them feel blamed. It makes them feel emotionally exhausted. And that's exactly what I'm describing here from the person that is trying to express their feelings. Now, the bigger truth that you will start to see is you're not asking for love. You're asking simply for honesty, respect, communication, and to feel chosen. You're not asking for much. You're asking for standards of a basic, long-lasting relationship. And yes, they are very normal relationship needs. But when someone feels constantly, let's say, questioned, they often go into a defensive mode. And once that pattern starts, oh my gosh, it becomes extremely hard to fix without both wanting to work on it. It takes both people to work on it. So the strongest thing that you can do when you're in this particular situation is don't chase another explanation. You already explained yourself. You already told them. It's up to them. You already said what you needed to say. Closure does not come from the other person agreeing with you. The closure comes from accepting that they see the situation differently. And there's something I want you to remember. When you have a good heart and you give something or someone everything and still end up in a relationship where you feel unappreciated, misunderstood, emotionally drained, that does not mean you fail, ladies and gentlemen. It just means the dynamic between the two people stop being healthy. So when that happens over a long period of time, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, one person, their brain starts to detach, but their heart is still trying to make sense of everything. That's why you probably keep replying to conversations, probably continue to keep reaching out and, constantly sending posts or messages, and which is completely normal. That's part of it. But here's the most important thing that I want to explain. And it's going to give you a lot of clarity and help you, if you're in this type of situation. You've already told them your feelings. You've already explained to them how they hurt you and what they did wrong. And if they're defensive or dismissive, then the best way to reply is calm, short, and neutral. You don't want to reopen an emotional argument. You just want them to acknowledge what they did to you that made you hurt, made you have pain. And it's up to them to acknowledge that. Why does this work? Because it doesn't escalate the conflict. It shows maturity and closure. It clearly, it ends the emotional back and forth. And one important thing I want you to remember, after you're sinning or you're stating your feelings and your emotions, if they become defensive or dismissive, at that point, don't reply anymore. Don't text anymore. If they're defensive or dismissive, then they don't care about your feelings. That is something very important to remember. We're going to go to part 2 on this. So please leave a comment, like, subscribe, and jump over to part 2.